Let's talk about my Chicago Bulls. Fantasy basketball value, undervalued players, overvalued players, breakouts, injuries to take into consideration in your drafts, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I'm from Detroit, ex-boxer. My real name is Joey Chicago. Oh, I thought I fought under the name of Kid Minneapolis, and I saw Kid Minneapolis fight once in Cincinnati. No, thinking of Kid New York, who fought out of Philly, who was killed in the ring in Houston by Tex Colorado, you know, the Arizona assassin. Yeah, he was from Dakota. I don't remember if it was North or South. South Dakota was his brother from West Virginia. You sure know your boxing. All I know is never bet on the white guy. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we're available on all platforms. All right, we're going to talk Chicago Bulls and their fantasy value. Remember, Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl is open. Link in description, link in bio, QR code on screen, linktree/AlloFB Bowl. Points, categories, roto leagues, all there. Join up as many as you want. Slow drafts starting pretty soon. We are here talking about the Chicago Bulls, as I said, and I think this is an interesting squad, not in the fact that they're interesting because their management and ownership is horrific, but they're a team that, again, I don't like them. I don't think that they're good. I think they're going to be bad, and I think they've been fooling themselves and trying to fool their fans for years and years and years. And every year, the Bulls fans buy the Kool-Aid. They drink the Kool-Aid, in fact. Maybe they buy it first, or they're just giving it. I don't know. I don't know how the Kool-Aid references work. But what they do is they go, oh, no, we're going to be good this time. No, you're not, because the team has no idea what they're doing. And the ownership has no idea what they're doing, and the management has no idea what they're doing, and all they want is play-in revenue or one series playoff game revenue. They don't care. They don't care. And they make questionable decisions after questionable decisions after questionable decisions. Continually. That doesn't mean there's not things to be interested in or excited about or things that we can use for a fantasy basketball perspective, because that's exactly what we're here to do. So let's just start off with what I think will be the Chicago Bulls' projected rotation for this upcoming season. I think most of it is relatively straightforward. I think there is one spot that is open. I think we've got Josh Giddey and Coby White in the backcourt without any question. You've got Nikola Vucevic starting at center unless they make a decision on him earlier than we think. I think Matas Buzelis starts at the 4, again, without too many concerns. The other spot is up in the air. At the moment, I've got Isaac Okoro there, who they traded Lonzo Ball for straight up. All right, whatever. You could tell me that Lonzo is injured and he misses a lot of time, which is very clearly true, and he is a distressed asset after they just re-signed him, by the way. But getting just Isaac Okoro back, who's also bad, doesn't make sense. So it could be Okoro. It could be Fanta Pants Kevin Huerter. It could be Patrick Williams. It could be Ayo Dosunmu in that role. I think they're probably the 4 options, but to me, it doesn't really matter if it's Huerter or Okoro or Williams or Dosunmu. I'm not drafting any of them in 10 or 12 team formats. There will be times when someone like Dosunmu or Huerter, more than the other two, have value for leagues. It's not off the bat. So Giddey, White, Okoro, Buzelis, and Vucevic. The rotation, I think, is going to include Huerter, Trey Jones, Zach Collins, or it could be Jalen Smith. I don't know how they're viewing that because they flip-flopped on that a lot last season. Ayo Dosunmu, and then Patrick Williams, and then the 6th guy will be Smith or Collins, and then when/if Vooch is gone, they will step into a larger role. But I think that's probably how they go. Huerter, Jones, Collins, Dosunmu, Williams. And then that leaves guys like Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, first-round pick Noah Essengay, Jalen Smith on the outside looking in. That's how I think it is going to look for the Bulls when we start off the season. What are the projection questions? I think one of the big ones is will Nikola Vucevic last the season on this squad? I think that it's been very well established that what he did last season was not sustainable because it literally didn't sustain last season. That level of shooting is just not a possible thing. I guess one of the other questions with Vuce is he a 38% shooter or a 31% shooter? Is he 35? Like, where is he? Because he was just out of control shooting last season. And then, of course, it fell away. But that shooting built everything around his fantasy game. I don't think the Bulls are going to be a slower team than last season. I think they might even ramp the pace up, which helps all their players, including Vooch. I think pace overall, by the way, across the league is going to be up this season. And I think pressure, steal rate, turnover rate is going to be up across the league. General rule. But Vooch is on an expiring deal. They have been, I believe, trying to trade him for the last couple of years. And the reason they can't is people don't want him because he is a no defense, offensive center who is not like elite at things that you might think that he is. Creates a lot of problems in flow of game. And if a team trades for Vooch, it's not going to be, I don't think, as a starter. He's an expiring deal. There was some talk that they would buy him out and he just wouldn't be there opening night. I don't think that'll be the case. But I think that any situation where Vooch gets moved, it is worst case scenario for fantasy. Now, if for some reason he finds his way heading to the team I just did a show on earlier today in Charlotte, then yeah, we're good. We're fine. The minutes will be there, the usage might come down or whatever, but we're fine. The role is solid. But most teams who'd be looking to acquire an expiring Nikola Vucevic are not going to be the Hornets. So that is a concern about where he sits. Josh Giddey, I think, is a projection question because I've said this many times and I'll say it again here because we're talking Chicago Bulls, is that when I headed into this projection season, this off-season, I thought that I would be just below everyone on Giddey because I fought with so many people about what Josh Giddey was doing last season, saying that this stuff that he's doing is not real, it's not translatable. And I hold by that. That just was not going to hold, hitting 46% on threes, like doubling your steal and block rate. It wasn't going to be a real thing. So I dialed that all down on my projections. Yet somehow I'm still above where people are in Giddey's projections. So I think that maybe people, not really they took my words to heart, but they maybe listened to me or saw the numbers for themselves and went, Giddey can't be good because he shot that elite shooting number which has no basis in reality in sticking. Therefore, his numbers will be bad. I actually do not think that Josh Giddey needs that elite level of shooting to still be very good. Now, he does need that elite level of shooting to be a top 5 player, which is what he was down the stretch. So he's got no shot of that. But I don't think he needs to be a 45% three-point shooter to be a second-round fantasy player. There was, some of the stats on his shooting was like, I think he was one of the most left wide open shooters in the NBA. He took advantage of it, but I think that there'll be a little bit more pressure put on him this season and it will drop it back. But look at his numbers. Like, they're not great from last season. He played only 30 minutes a night. But again, if you want to look at what Giddey did last season, where he was the 54th overall player in only 30 minutes a night and 22 usage, and to think that some of the draft spots for him have him about that same range now, it's insane to think that this is all he will do. So I don't think that he needs that elite level of shooting to smash through ADP. The reason I have him high is not because of that elite shooting. It's not. I don't think he needs it, and I don't want you to be confused as into my reasons why I've got him there. Okay, that next sentence looks like it's a typo. It looks like it's a misspelling where I said this is Patrick Williams redux. What I mean is that, like, are we going to go back to the well again with Patrick Williams? We've tried it, and then we tried it again, and are we going to try it again? I would bloody hope not. But Billy Donovan can be annoying. That would what would derail Matas Buzelis is if they say, right, Matas, you're off the bench again. Patrick Williams is starting. It's like, bro, we know what Patrick Williams is. The answer is bad. Surely they don't, but does they get any front office pressure saying, hey, we're idiots and gave this guy 5 years, $90 million. You might want to play him. I guess one of the questions here is going to be, what does Matas Buzelis improve upon? That you might have that question about, look, I don't think I can take Buzelis that high. He hasn't proven it yet. I think there's obviously value in looking at what players have done in the past. But there are a lot of people who draft in fantasy based on what happened. And I don't think it's a good way of going about it. Well, Buzelis, they didn't like him. He played 19 minutes. Okay, cool. What's happening now? So where does he improve? Well, he's probably just going to get 50% more minutes. He's a rookie going into a second-year player. So he's probably going to improve free throw rate, field goal percentage, three-point percentage, maybe assist rate. They're all probably going to improve. So where does he improve? I'd say almost everywhere. And I just don't want people falling into the trap of saying, well, he was actually 250th last season. That's great. But who cares? We've got to look forward. It's not all about, just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't happen. And if you have that mindset, it means you will never be ahead on anything. The last point here is Coby White's consistency. Is it an issue? I would say yes, it is. Now, White, almost more so than Giddey down the stretch, benefited from insane shooting. I think he shot 55% from the field post All-Star break, which if you've been involved in Coby White from fantasy, if you've watched the Chicago Bulls, you know he's got no shot of being real. But he's someone who can do that for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then shoot 40% for 4 weeks. The difference between him and Giddey in terms of relying upon that is that White is not a volume rebounder. He's not a volume assist guy. He's not getting defensive stats. Not that Giddey's a big defensive stat guy, but White relies upon scoring and shooting. So consistency can be a real problem, and almost as much as what Giddey's numbers at the end of last season were fueled by the shooting numbers, White's were as well, and that's probably a little bit under the radar. I'm going to come back with some over and undervalued players for the Chicago Bulls. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. So think about the last time that you had an urgent need. It might have been a plumber or some other sort of service provider. You called them, they didn't answer. And you go, all right, see what happens. No. You went to the next person because you needed something done right there, right then. That is why you need OpenPhone, which is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications all from an app on your phone or computer. It lets you manage business calls, OpenPhone does, and texts from a single app. And the shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat, and the AI agent handles missed calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering you guys 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That is openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, we are talking Chicago Bulls for the upcoming fantasy season, like I've said so many times. Let's take a look at some undervalued guys for this Bulls squad. Who are those players? Where do they sit with regard to ADP? Where do they sit with regard to ranks on sites? And again, you know that I am high on Josh Giddey. It is not because he is Australian, because again, listen to literally any show that I did in March or April last season. It is because I just think he's being undervalued. And to me, it is relatively clear. And I look at the projections I have on Giddey. They're not that high. Like, they don't come in and say, well, he's going to average 25 a game. Like, not remotely close to that. I just think that he's being undervalued. He's ranked at 57 on Yahoo, on ESPN for categories. All right, what? He's at 35 on Yahoo, which again, you might think that seems reasonable. I think it's too low. I think he's in the 20s. I think he's in the teens. I think he's in the teens for all, to be honest, but I think he's a little bit better in points than categories. I just think that the numbers for Giddey, again, it doesn't rely upon him shooting big shooting percentages. I think Coby White's value is underrated a little bit on Fantrax with an ADP of 65. There is risk with him, for sure. I think he's a top 50-ish sort of player, and that Fantrax ADP is interesting. Now, you could make arguments that if you're getting him in the 60s on Yahoo and on ESPN, it's the same. It is, that's right. But he's currently got an ADP on Yahoo at 59. On ESPN, he's ranked at 59 for category leagues. He's ranked at 51 for points leagues. So that takes away some of the value, I think, in some of those areas. So that's not as important to snag him across all formats, but it's just got to be like if it makes sense. And I think Matas Buzelis continues to be underrated. He's at 102 ADP, so he is coming in on Yahoo. Be aware of that. It's coming in. But he's ranked 121 there. ESPN's got him ranked 236. Like, come on, what on earth are we on about? What is happening with that? He's ranked 139th for ESPN points leagues. These are all pretty obvious spots to look at him. I think that he can get as high as top 75 this season. I probably wouldn't take him there. And yeah, I'm aware that in one of the mock drafts, I took him in the 70s. But as I've said in many of these mock drafts, often if I do take someone there like that, I'll explain it. But that one was also an auto draft. But I'll explain it saying, hey, I am showing you that I am comfortable with this guy being around this area in terms of value. But I don't necessarily need to do that because I'm not here playing an ADP game, which is something you do need to do in real drafts. You do need to at times play the ADP game. It's more showing you valuations of certain guys at times. I think Buzelis is an undervalued guy basically across the board in nearly all situations. Maybe Yahoo points, he's not quite there, but he's not far off. For overvalued guys, there's only one that really stands out to me, and that is Vuce. Now, I think that where Vuce sits with a rank of 66 on Yahoo is actually pretty good value for category leagues. His ADP is not better than that. It's 56, so the value is not quite as interesting. For some reason, Nikola Vucevic is the 19th, ranked player on ESPN points leagues. And that's ridiculous. That's insane. That is not something you should do. That is overvaluation for Vuce. But yeah, he sits at 44 on their category ranks. His ADP is 32, which is nudging high. It's nudging high. But in the 50s, we're good with it. At 19, we are absolutely not in a million years good with that under any circumstance whatsoever. None. Not interested. Let's take a look at some of these stars for the Bulls. And again, what do I mean when I'm talking about stars in this context? It's players that I think can be top 50 fantasy guys for the season. And there's 3 names on this team. Giddey, White, and Vuce. I think they can all be top 50 players. Like I've said, we know that shooting is a variable stat. And all 3 of these guys had huge benefits from shooting improvements last season. Vuce for the first 3 months of last season, White and Giddey for the second 2 to 3 months of the season. We should come in looking at Josh Giddey, Coby White, and Nikola Vucevic, tampering those expectations down, but still understanding we also now have a full season without Zach LaVine. Because last season, LaVine was there for 3 months of the year, and then he was gone at the deadline. It is also worth noting that the second half of last season, Lonzo Ball wasn't there, but he's also gone. The only real and we're going to talk about this in a second, but the only guy that wasn't there that is now there is Ayo Dosunmu, who does have ball handling opportunities at times, but I don't know that it's going to be that big of an impact. Just one guy not being around. So I think all of these guys have top 50 potential. I'd be very surprised if Giddey is not. I think White and Vuce will be borderline top 50 guys. It will depend on format and depend on a few little variables. But I think they're all in that area. And I think it makes a decent chunk of sense to consider those guys in those ranges as long as you're not going crazy on it and you understand that there is variance that can throw it back into different areas. If you like throwing it back... No. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsback. The sports book. The NFL season is here and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer right now. New customers can bet just $5 and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is easy, it is fun. It is great to use for all of your sports betting needs, whether it's just watching a game with mates, doing it by yourself, playing across multiple sports with live same game parlays or player props, or looking at futures across multiple sports and putting those together. You can do all of that on FanDuel. Of course, if you win that first $5 bet, you get those $300 in bonus bets. So when you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, so like I said, we are here talking about the Chicago Bulls. We just had a look at their guys who I think have some star upside for this upcoming season. That is top 50 potential. Now let's get into some new arrivals. And the teams that we've done on all of these shows so far, I've gone through about 8 or 9 new players onto the team. For the Bulls, it's not that many. They traded Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro, who I think has a chance to start, and I have absolutely no interest in drafting Isaac Okoro outside. Let me just have a look of where I've got what's his name? Okoro. Yeah, maybe I'm in a 20-man league, I consider it. Maybe. He's just bad for fantasy. I think that, obviously someone like Kevin Huerter or Ayo Dosunmu in that spot will be way more interesting. The other guy they picked at number 12 in the draft was Noah Essengay, a very high free throw rate forward with some very intriguing upside skill sets, but he's very young. The shooting, I think, will be iffy, and the opportunity is just not there with Buzelis, with Phillips, with Williams, with Huerter, with Okoro. He's not going to get many opportunities early on here. And that's it. That's what they changed. They brought in Yuki Karamura, the 5'6" Japanese point guard who played for Memphis on a 2-8. Not going to matter. They drafted Lachlan Ulbrich, a 2-way center out of Australia. Again, these guys just aren't going to play. But this is what the team, when we look at what they did, and that's why people go, I think the Bulls are going to be really good. I don't think so. They made no changes here. They bring in Okoro and Essengay. It's also why, again, I have a little bit of faith in Giddey and White, because they didn't bring in other players. No one is there. It's just Dosunmu returning. That's it. So we're in situations where this team is relatively stagnant in terms of how the roster looks and how it's probably going to play out. Same head coach, it's all the same stuff. In terms of breakout players, I think that obviously I've spoken a lot about Josh Giddey already. And I think it's fair to call him a potential breakout guy. If I think he's going to be a top 20 player, that's a breakout for Giddey. Do I think, and again, I'll be very clear on this because there can be misinterpretations. Do I think Josh Giddey is a long-term top 20 player for fantasy or in the NBA? Absolutely not. If I have Josh Giddey in a dynasty league, I am trading away. He is not a player to me who leads your team as a number one option to be a good team. He will keep you being a mid-team. We also saw how bad he was in the playoffs for the Thunder, but also in the play-in for the Bulls. Bad. Teams focus in. It does not tend to work. And if you're in a dynasty, the Bulls might never become good. They might just always want to be the 9 seed. That's possible. And Giddey could continue to roll out big numbers and big numbers. But I would not look at the Bulls as saying we have solved our problem. We've got our number one now. $100 million for Josh Giddey, and we just build everything around him. Because that, to me, is not a recipe for a level of success that you want. Now, of course, in the East, where Milwaukee, Indiana, Boston are all set to take big steps back, maybe the Bulls can be the 6th seed. But again, if I'm still talking dynasty leagues and we're trying to look 3-4 years in advance, overall, Josh Giddey will not, I don't think, be able to maintain that number. But I still think there is a breakout coming. I think that Matas Buzelis has to be considered there. Now, it is always cheating to consider a second-year player a breakout guy, but I think this is pretty obvious. Buzelis played just 19 minutes a night. So, if you just want to ask what does he improve on, just, again, it's 50% more minutes. That's the easy question here. It's 50% more minutes. Buzelis started 31 games last season. He played 27 minutes in those starts. He averaged 13 and 4.5 with a block a game at 47 and 81. Now, his free throw shooting was not this good at G League Ignite, but he said it himself. He was a good shooter in in high school. And he shot 36% on threes, and I doubted him. He backed it up. He shot the ball really well. The field goals at 45, that can ramp up. I don't really have a doubt about that. As a starter, he shot 58 from 2. As a bench player, he shot 48. I don't think 58 is a realistic number for him, but 48's not going to be something that holds, I don't think. So I think Buzelis has got many areas to improve. 3-point percentage, maybe. Probably. He shot 46% over his last 16 games from 3. Much like Giddey and White, probably not going to hold at that level. But knock him 1 to 2 percentage points up on his overall number? Yeah, sure. Can he go and put his blocks higher? I think it's possible. Assists? I do think that's going to happen. I think he's a solid enough passer. So I think that Matas Buzelis has some pretty sizable upside this season. I've talked about this a lot. He's getting drafted in a lot of spots outside the top 100. I think that he's a pretty clear top 90-ish guy. More so in categories than in points, but pretty clear and very easy scope to be top 75. Very easy, I think, to get to that sort of area is Matas Buzelis. Heading into the year, there's only one real injury concern. It's not even a concern, but it's someone who didn't end last season, and that's Ayo Dosunmu with shoulder surgery. He should be ready to go opening night. He will not be a target for me in 12-team leagues. He needs one of White or Giddey to be out. He is not a high usage player who relies upon outlier shooting percentages to get you enough fantasy value. Like, he's currently ranked 125 on Yahoo. To me, that's just not an interesting number at all. He's more of a 14-team league player than 12. There'll be times when we use Dosunmu in fantasy leagues, absolutely, but he's not someone that's going to be playing 35 a night. I don't think the path to the minutes is not super clear. I guess he could start. Instead of Okoro, maybe. But even then, I'm going to be very much less interested in him than what others are. I'm very confident in saying that that's my position on him. In terms of schedules, again, this doesn't really matter at all for the Bulls, but they've got league minimum 13 back-to-backs. No one you're really worried about here. The worry you're going to have is, what do they do with Vooch? And if you're in draft and stash formats, do you pick Collins and Smith? And the answer is yes. I do think Smith is actually the better player, but he's more inconsistent and he's had injuries, well, so has Collins. But I don't know how the Bulls view that. And that's one of the big sort of doubt points, I guess, with this squad. So when we're looking at this team, I think that if you took Josh Giddey in round 2, it would work out okay for you. If you get him in round 3, even better. I think Coby White and Vooch around the 50s area is totally solid. I think Buzelis will be a top 100 player. So if you get him in the 90s, very good luck to you. Very good option. Could you take flyers on Herter or Jones or Dosunmu at the end of drafts? Like, sure, I don't really know why you would, but you could. Do I care about Isaac Okoro or Patrick Williams or Julian Phillips? Not really. I think the team is relatively straightforward at the moment, but that could all get turned on its head if Vooch is traded or cut early on in the season or bought out or whatever, and then we get changes because usage flows to other areas, other players jump into roles like Collins and Smith, and opening up other things for guys to do. This team will play at a high pace. This team will put pressure on the ball. They're not a good defensive team, but they'll put pressure there. And Billy Donovan has been very good at getting defensive performances out of players who are not good at that. And we don't have to rely upon outlier shooting. I want you to outlier shot at the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, Linktree/LOFB Bowl, QR code on the screen, link in the description, sign up for as many of those leagues as you want. If you are here on the old YouTube, subscribe on the audio feed as well. Hit the hype button in the YouTube mobile app if you're watching the video. Just scroll across where the comments are and you'll see a hype button. You can hit that. That would be great if you can give me one of those, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.